There's a specific kind of pain that lives quietly inside certain people. It doesn't announce itself with tears or dramatic breakdowns. It sits in the background like a low hum you've learned to ignore until someone gets close, until someone says they love you, and suddenly that hum becomes deafening, because somewhere deep inside, a voice whispers the same thing it's always whispered. You don't deserve this. They'll leave. They always do. And you'll find a way to prove that voice right. This is the psychology of people who can never believe they deserve love. Not because they're broken, not because they're unlovable, but because somewhere in their past, love became conditional. And conditional love teaches you one devastating lesson: that you have to earn what should have been given freely. Let me take you inside that mind, because if you've ever pushed someone away while desperately wanting them to stay, if you've ever felt like an imposter in your own relationships, if you've ever looked at genuine affection and thought, they don't really know me, then you already understand what I'm about to say. This doesn't start in adulthood. It starts much earlier, in the small moments no one remembers but your nervous system never forgets. You're 5 years old and you're excited about something. You run to show a parent, but they're too tired, too stressed, too distracted. Your joy is an interruption. Your needs are inconvenient, so you stop asking. Or maybe you're 8 and you make a mistake. A glass breaks. A grade isn't perfect. And instead of comfort, you get anger. You get disappointment. You get silence that feels like punishment. And in that silence, a belief forms. Love is something you get when you're good enough, when you're perfect enough. Fast forward 20 years, you're an adult now. You've built a life. You've learned to function. But that belief, it's still there. Buried so deep you don't even see it controlling everything. Someone patient, someone who wants to know you. And instead of relief, you feel terror. Because here's what most people don't understand. When you grow up believing love is conditional, genuine love feels like a trap. It feels too good to be true. So your mind starts looking for proof that it's not real. You scan for signs of disappointment. You wait for them to leave. You might even create problems just to confirm what you've always believed, that you're not worth staying for. Psychologists call this an insecure attachment style. More specifically, it's often anxious or disorganized attachment formed in childhood, when caregivers were inconsistent, when love came with strings attached, when affection depended on your behavior rather than your existence. Your brain learned a warped version of connection. Love became something you chase but never quite catch, something you earn but never keep. And here's the cruel part. That programming doesn't just affect how you receive love, it affects how you give it. Because when you don't believe you deserve love, you either give too much or not enough. You become the person who overcompensates, who does everything for others while neglecting yourself. Or you become the person who keeps everyone at arm's length, who sabotages intimacy before it can hurt you. Both versions come from the same wound. The belief that your inherent self isn't enough, that you have to perform, to prove, to perfect yourself into something worthy. But worthiness was never meant to be earned. It was supposed to be your birthright. Think about what happens in your mind when someone says, "I love you" for the first time. Most people feel joy, relief, warmth. But if you carry this wound, you feel panic. Your brain starts asking questions. Why? What do they want? What happens when they see the real me? When will this end? You might smile and say it back. But inside, you're already bracing for the inevitable moment when they realize you're not what they thought. When the mask slips, when they see the parts of you that you've spent your whole life hiding, the needy parts, the messy parts, the parts that just want to be held without having to earn it first. This is exhausting. Living like this is exhausting because you can never rest. You can never just be loved. You're always performing, always monitoring, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And the worst part? Sometimes you drop it yourself. You pick fights over nothing. You withdraw without explanation. You test them to see if they'll stay. And when they don't, when they finally get tired of the walls you keep building, you tell yourself you were right all along, but you weren't right. You were just scared. There's a difference between truth and the stories. Trauma teaches us to tell ourselves, "Let me show you how deep this goes." It's not just romantic relationships. It's friendships too. It's family dynamics. It's every connection you form. When you don't believe you deserve love, you start viewing all relationships through a transactional lens. You become hyper-vigilant to any sign of rejection. A delayed text response becomes proof they're losing interest. A cancelled plan feels like abandonment. Someone having a bad day and being short with you confirms your deepest fear, that you're a burden, that your presence is tolerated, not treasured. Neuroscience shows us that this kind of chronic insecurity actually changes your brain. The amygdala, your fear center, becomes overactive. You're constantly scanning for threats, and in relationships, threats look like distance, criticism, or indifference. Your nervous system stays in a state of low-level anxiety, always preparing for rejection even when none is coming. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational thought, struggles to override these emotional alarms. So even when logically you know someone cares about you, emotionally you can't believe it. The feeling wins, the fear wins, and you act accordingly. You start creating distance as protection. You stop sharing your real feelings because vulnerability feels like handing someone a weapon. You laugh off compliments because accepting them means acknowledging you might actually be valuable. And you can't let yourself believe you're worth that kind of pain. This is the paradox. You desperately want love, but you're terrified of it. Because the closer someone gets, the more they can hurt you. And when you've been hurt before, when love has been used as a tool for control or abandoned without warning, your brain learns one thing: distance is safety. Loneliness is predictable, and predictable pain is better than surprising devastation. So you build walls. But here's what you don't realize. Those walls don't just keep others out, they keep you trapped inside, alone with the very thoughts that convinced you those walls were necessary in the first place. But why does this belief persist? Why, even when someone proves they're trustworthy, even when they show up consistently, do you still struggle to believe you deserve their love? Because belief systems formed in childhood are stored in the emotional brain, not the logical one. They're not facts you can debate away. They're feelings you absorbed before you even had language to name them. When you're young, your brain is wired to accept whatever environment you're in as normal. If love was conditional in that environment, then conditional love becomes your template. It becomes the only kind of love your nervous system recognizes as real. So when someone offers you something different, something stable and unconditional, it doesn't feel like love. And this is where the self-sabotage begins. Not because you're foolish or ungrateful, but because your brain is trying to return to what feels familiar. Even if familiar means painful, because painful and familiar is less scary than good and unknown. You might push them away with coldness, you might drown them with neediness, you might cheat, lie, or create drama just to force the ending you've been waiting for. Because if they're going to leave anyway, at least you can control when and how it happens. At least you can tell yourself you saw it coming. At least you don't have to live with the uncertainty of being loved by someone who might wake up one day and change their mind. But here's the truth underneath all of this. You're not afraid of love. You're afraid of loss. You're afraid of the moment when love is taken away and you're left holding the emptiness it leaves behind, because you've held that emptiness before and it almost destroyed you. So now you protect yourself by never fully letting anyone in, by keeping one foot out the door, by convincing yourself you don't need what you've always needed. The simple, quiet assurance that you matter to someone, not for what you do, not for how you perform, but for who you are when no one's watching. There's a specific memory that often haunts people with this wound. It's different for everyone, but the shape of it is the same. It's the moment you realized love could be withdrawn. Maybe a parent threatened to leave. Maybe they gave you the silent treatment until you apologized for existing too loudly. Maybe they loved you only when you achieved, only when you obeyed, only when you made them look good. Or maybe it was subtler than that. Maybe they were just absent. You learned that your feelings didn't matter. That expressing need was weakness. That love was something you watched other people receive while you stood outside the window, wondering what made them worthy and you invisible. Children don't question these things. They don't think, my parent has unresolved trauma. They think, I must be unlovable. And that thought becomes the foundation of everything that follows, every relationship you enter. Every time you flinch at affection, every time you apologize for taking up space. And here's what breaks my heart about all of this. You're not unlovable. You never were. But when you're taught that lesson young enough, when it's repeated often enough through action or inaction, it becomes your truth. Not the truth, your truth. The lens through which you see yourself and everyone trying to love you. Children absorb love like language. Before they can speak, before they understand words, they're learning what love means through touch, tone, presence. When a baby cries and someone comes, they learn the world is safe. When they reach out and hands receive them, they learn they matter. When they exist and someone delights in that existence, they learn they're worthy simply for being alive. But when those moments are inconsistent, when comfort comes with conditions, when presence depends on performance, the lesson changes. Love becomes a puzzle with pieces that never quite fit. You learn to read the room before you enter it. You learn to gauge moods before you speak. You learn that your safety depends on your ability to disappear when you're inconvenient and appear when you're needed. This creates what psychologists call hypervigilance. Your nervous system becomes a radar, constantly scanning for signs of danger in the people you love. A shift in tone, a change in energy, a moment of distraction, that you've done something wrong, that the love you thought was there is already fading. And the exhausting part? You can't turn it off. Even when someone is being kind, your brain is looking for the moment when kindness ends. Even when someone is patient, you're waiting for their patience to run out. Even when someone says they're not going anywhere. Because staying has always required you to be someone you're not. So what happens when someone actually does love you? When they show up consistently? When they don't punish you for having needs? When they hold space for your mess without making you feel like a burden? Your mind doesn't know what to do with that information. It contradicts everything you've been taught. So it searches for explanations that fit the old story. They're lying. They're naive. They haven't seen the real you yet. They'll leave once they do. This is temporary. This is a mistake. This is too good to be true. And the saddest part? Sometimes you're so committed to those explanations that you never give love a chance to prove them wrong. You end things before they can end you. You reject before you can be rejected. You break your own heart as practice for the inevitable moment when someone else will. But what if that moment never comes? What if the love being offered is real? What if you are worth staying for? What if the person looking at you sees exactly who you are, flaws and all, and chooses you anyway? Or does belief feel more dangerous than doubt? This is the cage. Not the absence of love, but the inability to receive it when it arrives. Because receiving requires vulnerability. It requires you to stand in your truth and let someone witness it. And for someone who learned early that truth leads to rejection, vulnerability feels like self-destruction. So instead, you perform. You become the partner you think they want. You edit yourself into something palatable. You hide the anger, the sadness, the fear that you're not enough. You smile when you want to scream. You say you're fine when you're breaking. And every time you do this, the gap between your real self and the self they love grows wider, until one day you realize they don't actually love you. They love the version you've been pretending to be. And that realization doesn't bring relief. It brings despair. Because now you have proof. Proof that the real you is unlovable. Proof that you were right to hide. Proof that love is conditional, after all. But here's what you're missing. They never had a chance to love the real you because you never showed them. You decided before they could. You rejected yourself on their behalf. And then you blamed them for confirming what you already believed. There's a specific kind of loneliness that comes with this. It's not the loneliness of being physically alone. It's the loneliness of being with someone and still feeling unseen, of lying next to someone at night and feeling like you're in different universes, of hearing, "I love you," and thinking, "But you don't even know me." This is the cost of self-protection. You build walls so high that even when you invite someone inside, they're still standing in the outer courtyard. They think they're close. You know they're miles away. And that distance, that gap between who you are and who they think you are, becomes its own kind of prison, because you can't fully relax. You can't fully trust. Every moment of intimacy is shadowed by the fear that you're about to be discovered, that the real you, the one with needs and wounds and fears, is about to slip through the cracks of your performance. And when it does, when you finally can't hold it together anymore, when you cry or get angry or ask for something you need, you watch their face, searching for the disappointment you're sure is coming. Sometimes it comes. Sometimes they do pull away because your needs feel too heavy, your emotions too intense, your history too complicated. And when that happens, it confirms everything. See, you were right. You are too much. You do scare people away. You should have kept pretending, but sometimes it doesn't come. Sometimes they stay. And that? Because now you have to reconcile two opposing truths. The truth you've always known, that you're unworthy, and the truth that's unfolding in front of you that maybe, just maybe, you've been wrong this whole time. This is the cognitive dissonance that breaks people open. When reality contradicts the core belief you've built your entire life around. When someone loves you not despite your mess but with it. When they see your darkness and don't treat it as something to fix or flee from. When they prove through their presence that you were lied to about your own worthiness. And here's what's fascinating. Your brain will fight this new information. It will resist. It will create problems where none exist. It will search for proof that this person is just naive, just temporarily fooled, just waiting for the right moment to leave. Because accepting that you're lovable means dismantling the entire identity you've built around being unlovable. And identities, even painful ones, feel safer than the unknown. Psychologists call this the familiarity principle. We're drawn to what we know, even when what we know hurts us. Because the known is predictable. The known has rules. The known lets us feel like we have some control. But love, real love, requires you to step into the unknown, to trust that you can be fully yourself and still be held. This is the cycle, and it repeats until you become aware of it. Not the love I have to earn, not the love I have to perform for, but the love that exists simply because I exist. What if the only thing standing between me and that love is my own disbelief? And I know what you're thinking right now. You're thinking, but you don't understand. I really am too much. I really am difficult. I really do mess things up. Maybe you are all of those things sometimes, but so is everyone. The difference is, most people don't believe those things make them unworthy of love. They believe those things make them human. This is where the healing begins. Not in becoming perfect, not in fixing every flaw, but in accepting that love was never supposed to be the prize for perfection. It was supposed to be the safety net that catches you when you fall. The constant that remains, even when everything else changes. The whisper that says, you're allowed to be messy and still be mine. But accepting that requires you to challenge every belief you've built your identity around. It requires you to question the voice that's been narrating your story since childhood, the one that says you're too much or not enough, the one that says you have to earn your place in someone's heart, the one that says love is finite and you've already used up your share. That voice isn't you. It's the wound speaking. It's the child who was left, rejected, or made to feel invisible. And that child did what they had to do to survive. They built walls, created rules, learned to expect nothing so disappointment would hurt less. Not by ignoring the past, but by integrating it. By looking at that child with compassion and saying, I see why you believed those things. I understand why you protected yourself. But we're safe now. We can lower the walls. We can try again. Because the truth is, you've been waiting your whole life for someone to prove you're lovable. But the only person who can truly convince you is yourself. This doesn't mean you won't still feel the fear. You will. You'll meet someone kind and your first instinct will still be to run. You'll hear, I love you, and your mind will still search for the catch. You'll experience consistency, and part of you will still wait for it to end. But now, you'll have awareness. You'll recognize the pattern. You'll see the wound trying to protect you from a danger that no longer exists. And slowly, with practice, you'll learn to sit with the discomfort of being loved. You'll learn that vulnerability doesn't always lead to abandonment, that showing your real self can deepen connection instead of destroy it, that you can have needs and still be worthy, that you can make mistakes and still be chosen. That love, real love, isn't something you earn, it's something you allow, This allowing is an active process. It's not passive acceptance. It's the conscious choice to notice when you're pulling away and choosing to stay present instead. It's catching yourself in the middle of a test. You know, the one where you create a problem to see if they'll leave, and stopping. It's feeling the urge to run and sitting with it long enough to realize the danger isn't real. It's watching your mind spin stories about why this won't last and gently redirecting it back to what's actually happening right now. Because the present moment is where healing lives. Not in the past where the wound was created. Not in the future where your fears project abandonment. But here, right now, where someone is looking at you with softness and you have a choice to believe the fear or to believe the love. And some days you'll choose fear. You'll retreat into old patterns. You'll push them away or cling too tightly or say something cruel to create distance. And that's okay. Healing isn't linear. You don't wake up one day suddenly able to receive love without resistance. You stumble toward it. You take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. You fall into old habits and then gently pull yourself out. Progress isn't perfection, it's direction. The key is what you do after you stumble. Do you use it as evidence that you'll never change? Do you spiral into shame and decide you're too broken to be loved? Or do you take a breath, acknowledge what happened, and try again? Because that willingness to keep trying even after you fail, that's the real work. That's where transformation happens. Think about what it means to truly let someone love you. It means letting them see you cry without apologizing for your tears. It means asking for what you need without minimizing it. It means saying, "I'm scared," instead of pretending you're fine. It means trusting that your vulnerability won't be weaponized, that your honesty won't be punished, that your humanity won't be rejected. This kind of trust doesn't come naturally when you've been hurt. It has to be built, one small moment at a time, one honest conversation, one need expressed and met, one fear shared and held gently. Each time you risk being real and the other person responds with care, you're creating new evidence, evidence that challenges the old belief. Maybe I can be seen and still be safe. And the beautiful thing, the more evidence you collect, the easier it becomes to believe. Your nervous system starts to relax. The hypervigilance softens. You stop scanning for threats because your brain is learning that connection doesn't always equal danger. That intimacy can be nourishing instead of depleting. But this process requires something most people don't talk about. It requires you to grieve. To grieve the relationships you sabotaged because you didn't know better. To grieve all the years you spent believing you weren't enough. That grief is heavy. It's painful. It feels like opening a wound that never properly healed. But it's necessary. Because you can't move forward while carrying the weight of unprocessed pain. You have to feel it. Acknowledge it. Let it move through you. And then, slowly, release it. This is where compassion comes in. Compassion for the child who learned love was conditional. Compassion for the teenager who built walls to survive. Compassion for the adult who keeps repeating patterns they desperately want to break. You're not weak for struggling. You're not defective for finding love difficult. And humans carry wounds. The question isn't whether you'll have them, it's whether you'll let them define you. Because here's the secret they don't tell you. The people who love you aren't looking for perfection. They're looking for truth. They want to know the you that exists behind the performance. The you that's scared and hopeful and trying. The you that sometimes gets it wrong but keeps showing up anyway. That's the you worth loving. Not despite your humanity, but because of it. So if you're reading this and you recognize yourself in these words, if you've spent your life convinced you're not enough, please hear this. The love you deserved was stolen from you before you understood what was happening. But that doesn't mean you don't deserve it now. It doesn't mean you can't learn to receive it. It doesn't mean you're broken beyond repair. You're not broken. You're protecting a wound that never healed. But not all closeness is dangerous. Not all love is conditional. Not all people will leave. And the only way to discover that is to take the risk, to let someone in, to let yourself be seen, to whisper the truth you've been hiding and see if they stay. And maybe they will, maybe they won't. But either way, you'll learn something you never learned as a child. That your worth isn't determined by who stays or leaves. that you can survive rejection and still be whole. That being chosen would be beautiful, but not being chosen doesn't make you unlovable. It just means the fit wasn't right. Because love isn't about finding someone who never leaves. It's about finding someone who sees your fear of being left and stays anyway. Someone who watches you build walls and gently dismantles them brick by brick. Someone who knows your history and doesn't use it against you. Someone who understands that your doubt isn't about them. It's about every person who came before them and taught you that love is temporary. And when you find that person, or when that person finds you, the work begins. The work of letting them love you. The work of believing you deserve it. The work of catching yourself in the old patterns and choosing something different. It won't be easy. There will be moments when you want to run, when the fear feels bigger than the love, but you'll stay. Not because you're convinced it will work out, but because for the first time, you're willing to find out. This is how you heal, not by erasing the past, but by creating a present that contradicts it, by building new neural pathways that say, love can be safe, vulnerability can be survived, I can be seen and still be cherished. One moment at a time, one risk at a time, one breath at a time, and maybe one day, years from now, someone will tell you they love you. You'll look at them and think, yes, I believe you, and I believe I deserve this. And in that moment, you'll realize something profound. You just finally stopped believing you weren't. That's the shift. That's the healing. Not in becoming someone different, but in accepting who you've always been. Messy, imperfect, beautifully human, and worthy of love not because of what you do, but because of what you are. A person, a soul, a heart that's been hurt but hasn't stopped beating, a life that's been lived in shadow but still reaches for light. But let's be honest about what this journey looks like. It's not a straight line from wounded to healed. It's messy. There will be days when you backslide, days when someone loves you and you feel nothing but fear, days when you're convinced you've learned nothing, that you're still that scared child who doesn't believe they deserve to be held. And on those days, the work is to be gentle with yourself, to remember that healing happens in layers, that you can be aware of your patterns and still fall into them. That knowing better doesn't always mean doing better, especially when your nervous system is wired for protection. The goal isn't to never feel fear again. It's to feel fear and not let it make all your decisions. Think about how much energy you've spent over the years trying to be lovable, trying to say the right things, be the right amount of available. Give just enough to keep someone interested, but not so much that you seem desperate. Trying to read their mind, anticipate their needs, make yourself indispensable so they won't leave. All that effort, all that monitoring, all that performing. And at the end of the day, you still felt alone. Because performance creates connection, but it doesn't create intimacy. And intimacy is what you've been craving all along. Intimacy is being known. Not just seen, but understood. It's when someone looks past your words to the feeling underneath. When they notice you're quieter than usual, and instead of assuming you're fine, they ask what's wrong and actually wait for the real answer. It's when you don't have to explain yourself because they've already learned your language, your silences, your needs, your fears, and they don't use that knowledge against you. But intimacy requires something terrifying. It requires you to stop managing how you're perceived, to stop curating your emotions, to stop filtering your truth through the question, will this make them leave? Because every time you filter, every time you edit yourself to be more acceptable, you're reinforcing the belief that the real you isn't enough. You're teaching both yourself and them that love is conditional on your ability to be easy, uncomplicated, low maintenance. But you're not low maintenance. No one is. We're all complex, contradictory, occasionally difficult humans, with needs and wounds and histories that shaped us in ways we're still trying to understand. And the right people won't expect you to be simple. They'll be willing to learn your complexity, to sit with your contradictions, to meet your difficulty with patience instead of frustration. And when you find those people, or when they find you, something shifts. You start to relax. Not all at once, not overnight, but gradually. You notice yourself saying things you normally wouldn't. Being honest about what you're feeling instead of pretending you're fine. And each time you do this and they don't leave, each time they respond with understanding instead of judgment, you're rewriting the story. The story that says vulnerability leads to abandonment. The story that says your needs will overwhelm people. The story that says the real you is too much, too broken, too complicated to love. Every moment of authentic connection is evidence against that story, and over time, with enough evidence, the story loses its power. But here's what you need to understand. This process doesn't erase your history. The wound will always be there. But it can transform from being the voice that controls you to being the voice you acknowledge and then choose not to follow. You can hear the fear whisper, "They're going to leave," and respond with, "Maybe, maybe not, but I'm staying present anyway." This is emotional maturity. Not the absence of fear, but the ability to act with love even when fear is present. To feel the urge to self-sabotage and choose connection instead. To notice yourself creating distance and gently pulling yourself back. To recognize the patterns and interrupt them, not perfectly, but consistently enough that new patterns can form. And here's something beautiful that happens along the way. As you learn to receive love from others, you start to give it to yourself differently too. You stop treating yourself with the same harshness you learned from people who made love conditional. You stop demanding perfection from yourself. You stop punishing yourself for having needs. You start speaking to yourself the way you'd speak to someone you truly care about. With patience, with compassion, with the understanding that you're doing your best with what you know. This self-love isn't selfish, it's foundational. If the voice in your head is constantly criticizing you, telling you you're not enough, then even when someone else says you're wonderful, you'll dismiss it. You'll think they don't really know you. But when you've done the work of accepting yourself, when you've learned to hold your own imperfections with tenderness, then external love can finally land. It can finally reach you, because you're no longer deflecting it. You deserve love. Not the kind you have to beg for, not the kind that comes with conditions, but the kind that's offered freely and received fully. The kind that says, "You belong here, with me, as you are, right now." You've always deserved that. You just forgot. Or maybe no one ever taught you. But now you know. And knowing is where everything changes. Knowing is where you begin again. Knowing is where you finally come home to yourself. And when you come home to yourself, you realize something beautiful. You've been searching for love in others when the love you needed first was your own. Not in a selfish way, but in the way that says, "I am worthy of my own compassion. I am deserving of my own patience. I am enough, even on the days when I don't feel like enough." Because that's where all love begins. In the quiet acceptance of yourself, in the gentle honoring of your wounds, in the brave decision to stop abandoning yourself the way others once did. So love yourself first, messily, imperfectly, with all the doubt and fear and hope tangled together. And then, when you're ready, let someone else love you too, not because you need them to complete you, but because you've finally created enough space inside yourself to let someone in. And that space, that openness, that willingness to be seen, that's not weakness, that's courage, that's growth. That's the most beautiful kind of strength there is. You deserve love. Say it until you believe it. Whisper it when the doubt creeps in. Hold it close when the fear gets loud. Because it's true. It's always been true. And one day, you'll look back at this moment and realize, this is where everything shifted. This is where you stopped running from love and started walking toward it. Slowly, carefully, but forward, always forward, into the light you've been too afraid to touch, into the warmth you've convinced yourself you don't deserve, into the arms of someone who looks at you and sees not a burden, but a gift.